Well, hey everyone, my name is Marek Olszewski. Thank you so much for coming. Really excited today to chat with you about Celo's transition from an L1 to an L2. And we really hope that this can be a case study for others to follow. And as you can see, I try to make my slides a little fun. And so today I was inspired by Zelda. I used to play Zelda as a kid. Kind of curious, how many people here played Zelda, any of the Zelda games? Okay. Wow, that's quite a lot. Cool. Well, you guys will enjoy these slides, and for the rest of you, I hope it's a treat as well. Yeah, if you like the format, you can tweet at me on Marek _ DMs are open. So, sorry, there's a bit of lag over here. So Celo's journey started 6 years ago in 2018, where we kind of started on this I would say big and ambitious kind of mission of traversing this treacherous land and working our way to the castle at the end of this terrain at the top of this mountain. We wanted to storm this castle and solve the final boss. And you might be wondering, well, who is the final boss in Celo's case? And for us, it's really about enabling people to use their mobile phones to send value to other people's phones, specifically stable value, right? I think we've started early on with this kind of goal of creating a global Venmo-like experience, and we started building that actually on Ethereum in 2018. But when we couldn't create the experience that we wanted, we ended up kind of launching our own Alt L1. And so, who was our little fighter to help us accomplish this? This was he. We were an EVM compatible L1, as I mentioned. We really believed in the EVM. We still believe in the EVM. I think it's, we have high conviction that it's going to become the main VM that everyone uses in the future. And so we launched our own proof-of-stake consensus-based protocol roughly 2 years before Ethereum went proof-of-stake. But in order to really go after this use case that I mentioned, we added a few extra features. So we added the ability to pay for gas with tokens. You can pay for gas in Celo with USDC, with USDT, CUSD, and a whole bunch of other local stablecoins by the Menta protocol. And then we also added Social Connect, which is a nice protocol that lets you send value to phone numbers. And this basically allows normies to use Celo without having to think about addresses, and when combined with the gas feature, without having to think about volatile assets. And then, just by, I guess, coincidence, someone in the community proposed that Celo programmatically offset its carbon. And so one of the kind of really cool features about the platform is that it's carbon negative. The protocol programmatically buys carbon offset credits and then retires them, which is just really nice, especially for anybody building a refi protocol. So this is our fighter. This is who we used to kind of embark on this treacherous journey. And you might be wondering, how are we doing? I get asked a lot at these kinds of events to share some alpha. And so, I thought I'd include these next few slides. None of this is real alpha. It's all off of Twitter, but, you may not have seen this. I would say that when it comes to kind of this final boss that we're working on, we're doing relatively well lately. The flywheel is really starting to spin. Dare I say, our little guy can start, raising his hands. And a lot of this is driven in large part by wallets like MiniPay. Who here has used the Opera browser ever? Okay, wow, half of the audience. It's amazing. So MiniPay is actually by Opera. They're a public company headquartered in Oslo. And inside one of their browsers, Opera Mini, they added MiniPay. And more recently, they launched it as a standalone wallet as well on Android. iOS is coming next month. And because it's built into Opera Mini, they have access to their huge distribution of 500 million installs, 100 million monthly active users. And so they've been onboarding millions of these people. I think they're over 4 million now, which is pretty incredible. They only launched last year. This is now driving a lot of transactions on the chain and a lot of daily active addresses. And so Artemis recently reported that there's now an equivalent amount of daily active addresses transacting with stablecoins for Celo as there is for Tron, and Tron has always been kind of the leading chain in this regard. And so we're tied now with Tron. We're not, we're still behind for other metrics like monthly active addresses, but we're going to get there. You know, together with all of Ethereum, I think we can definitely push back on Tron, which has, you know, as I said, been really leading in this regard for the longest time. And all of this is now creating a lot of volume on Celo. And so I was looking actually fairly recently what last month's volumes were for stablecoin transactions. And it turns out that last month we processed just under $4 billion worth of stablecoin volume. That is far in excess of anything we processed bull market, and you know, over double what we processed the previous month. So double what we processed in September. So a lot of volume. So that's it for alpha. You know, this, oh, it looks like my hidden slides are showing up. That's weird. Yeah, maybe just, I don't know. It's fine. I'll figure it out. Cool. So this talk is more about, you know, Celo coming home to Ethereum. So that's it for alpha. Hopefully you took some notes. And, you know, in this case, home is a pixelated cabin in the woods with a nice Ethereum window. It's okay. I got it. And, you know, we're doing this in large part because we are very, very, very excited about you know, this trend that we're seeing, Ethereum becoming the settlement layer of Web3. We really subscribe to this trend. We really believe in this. And you know, for really ideological reasons, we want to be part of it. You know, I mentioned that we started building on Ethereum way back when. And you know, at the time, there wasn't really a way for us to do what we wanted to do without launching kind of an alt L1. But now that there is an Ethereum scaling roadmap, you know, we can plug into that. And so that's a large reason why we spent, you know, over a year worth of effort on this transition to transition Celo from an L1 to an L2. You've probably heard of Justin Drake talking a lot about this, and actually he's going to be here right after this talk to share more about his thinking in this direction, so definitely stick around. But, you know, what does returning home look like specifically in the case of Celo? Well, it really means, you know, taking the best of Celo and kind of really repackaging it, distilling it, reshaping it into something that looks like an L2. And that's exactly what we've been working on, and we're really excited that we're, you know, at the audit stage right now. And so we're really, really close to being able to ship this on mainnet. And, you know, when that happens, we really hope that this can be a really kind of compelling case study for others to follow. And so, you know, already we feel like we've had some learnings that could be useful for other L1s. You know, if you're at all involved with another L1 or you know any other L1s, you know, I would encourage you to kind of point them towards this talk and go through kind of these 5 learnings from our journey. You know, we really hope others will follow suit, and we want to be here to help them with their journey. We want to present the map that they can follow. And so here are our 5 learnings from our journey transitioning from an L1 to an L2. Learning number 1, transition via a hard fork. And so when we talk about this transition, a lot of people kind of assume that this is what we're doing. You know, we're going to just keep our L1 chain humming along, and we're just going to launch a new L2, and then we're going to tell people, okay, now you figure it out. You migrate, right? This is what a lot of people think about. This is what other folks have actually done, and we don't really consider this, you know, truly migrating from an L1 to an L2 because you haven't really solved the problem for your users. This is really cumbersome for many people to have to deal with this. And so we don't recommend doing this. Instead, you know, and you might be thinking, okay, but if we're not going to launch, you know, another chain, then that means we have to hard fork into becoming an L2. And, you know, oh my God, there's $4 billion of, you know, monthly stablecoin volume. That's a lot of value. This is really scary. How are we going to do that? And you're right, it is scary. And in fact, the way we've been thinking about this is, you know, this isn't just a hard fork. This is what we're calling a hard fork. So 2 rocks and a fork. And, you know, this is probably where the, you know, very overused metaphor of kind of rebuilding an airplane while it's in flight, moving its engines, fits in. You know, this is really what this undertaking feels like. You know, we want to effectively take a running chain and completely change how it operates. And we think it's worth it because only full nodes will need to upgrade, right? We want to not have our users, our developers building on top of the chain have to think about this. We want them to have to do nothing. Of course, someone has to do something, and in the case of a hard fork, it's going to be the full node operators. But luckily, these people are very technical. They know how to do hard forks, and you know, while this is a harder hard fork for them to do, you know, they're up for the job. And the end result is that, you know, your users won't have to think about this, and you're going to have to do a lot more work to land this. But again, we think it's worth it. And so again, the learning is transition through a hard fork. Cool. Learning number 2. Use an existing L2 stack. So when we first started looking at this, we thought, okay, if we're going to do this hard fork, how do you do a typical hard fork? Well, normally you just go and update your existing client with some new code that starts executing at some block height. That's the normal way to do a hard fork. And, you know, you could put in your L2 code into your existing client, and you could do the upgrade that way. But the more we looked at this problem, the more we realized that, you know, if we were to do that, we'd be effectively introducing a new L2 stack to the whole Ethereum ecosystem. And I don't know about you, but right now it's pretty crowded. There's a lot of L2 stacks out there, and that's creating a lot of fragmentation. And ultimately, we didn't think that that would be good for the broader Ethereum ecosystem. And so instead, you know, we decided let's pick an existing stack, and we think that this is certainly a recommendation that others should follow suit. And so in our case, we picked OP and EigenDA, and we actually spent quite a long time deliberating on this, having governance votes on this, doing a lot of research. We really wanted to do this decision justice, and we certainly recommend that other people go through the same kind of due diligence process and really dig in to all the different stacks. And, you know, when you do this, the end result is that you will end up having 2 clients. You will have an L1 client that's based on your current code base, and then you will have an L2 client that is based on a completely new code base that's based on this stack. And effectively, when you do the upgrade, full node operators will have to switch the client that they're running at that particular block height where the hard fork will happen. And so that's in effect what we're doing. And again, this complicates the hard fork a little bit, makes it harder, but ultimately, you know, the end result is actually quite nice. We end up being able to stick with an existing stack that's already popular in the Ethereum ecosystem. We're not fragmenting the ecosystem more. And ultimately, we think that that's a good thing. And so we recommend that you pick an existing stack. Hidden slides. Cool. Okay, learning number 3. Learning number 3 is to migrate your chain data. So if we have 2 different clients all of a sudden, now you have to think about, okay, will this new client be able to even read my existing chain data from the first client, right? When you stop the first client and start the new one has to be able to kind of comprehend your chain data. And if your chain data is in any way different from Ethereum's chain data, then you would otherwise have to port over those changes into the L2 stack that you picked in order to make sense of the differences in that chain data. And so our suggestion is actually don't do that. Instead, we recommend migrating your chain data. And this is actually taking inspiration from OPStack. When they did their Bedrock upgrade, they actually did this as well. And we think that this is quite elegant because it allows you effectively to remove any incompatibilities with your new client and effectively remove any legacy code that might exist in your L1 client. In one fell swoop, basically make all that tech debt go away. The only caveat is that full node operators will have to run this extra script. And so in our case, this looks like this. We have our L1 blocks that are progressing from left to right. At a certain hard fork block height, the L1 clients will stop producing blocks. And then full node operators will have to run this chain data migration script that effectively repackages all of the chain data into a new format that in our case is OPStack compatible and removes a lot of this like old stuff that exists in the Celo blockchain. We've had things like, we launched 2 years before proof of stake for Ethereum. So we, at launch, removed all of our proof of work header fields. And then we realized, oh crap, people actually expect these to be there. So we re-added them with the later hard fork. And so we had all of this code that was, looking at the current block height and determining whether or not these headers should exist and how to interpret them. By migrating the chain data, we can actually remove all of that code, or I guess more specifically, we don't have to port that code over to the OPStack code base because we're repackaging our chain history to not have to do that. Likewise, we implemented our own EIP 1559 transaction types before Ethereum did it, and we're also deprecating those. And in effect, we're rewriting our chain history to not have to, so the new client doesn't have to reason about those old transaction types. And this does mean that we have one interesting kind of peculiar behavior, which is that if you're querying kind of an L2 client archive node, and you want to query some data that existed before the hard fork, suddenly that node won't be able to reason about that data because it won't have the code that previously would understand those old blocks. And so instead, we took another page out of Optimism's Bedrock upgrade, and we implemented kind of this proxying, where if you are querying data that happened before the hard fork, so say you want to trace a transaction, maybe that transaction type's deprecated, the new client doesn't know how to reason about it, the new client can just forward that request to an old client. The old client doesn't even have to sync. It can just sit there only responding to these types of queries. And the end result is users won't even know that there's actually two different clients servicing these RPC queries. And so it's quite elegant. Cool. Learning number 4, embrace Ethereum. Yeah. After we made this announcement, we heard from a lot of other L1s that they were kind of considering this as well. But when you looked into kind of their proposals and what they were thinking, it always felt disingenuous. Like they talked about like canonical L2 bridges, but they didn't want to actually settle on Ethereum. They, in some cases, talked about, okay, we can be an L2 to Ethereum, but Ethereum would also be an L2 under us. I think ultimately, I get where they're coming from. I think a lot of people are nervous about how their own ecosystems would react if they suddenly really committed to becoming an L2 and settling on Ethereum. And we're here to say, we were nervous too. We were actually really nervous. We had no idea how our ecosystem would react, and we had no idea how the Ethereum ecosystem would react when we made the proposal public. But in our case, at least, I think everyone was just super ecstatic. The broader Ethereum ecosystem was very welcoming. And so our recommendation for other L1s thinking about this transition is to do it wholeheartedly, embrace Ethereum. We think it's 100% worth it. Related to this, I think if you're going to embrace Ethereum, you may also want to think about EVM equivalents. If you're your own L1 today, you might have some differences from Ethereum, even if you're EVM compatible. And our recommendation is, one, I think try to think about how much of those differences you can deprecate. And two, for the ones that you can't deprecate, really think about distilling those differences down to just a patch queue that can sit on top of Geth. If you have a patch queue on top of Geth, you can really more easily track Ethereum, track future hard forks, and it just makes your life much easier. And so this is what we did. We worked really, really hard to basically boil and distill kind of the differences that Celo has down to just a really small kind of patch queue on top of, in our case, OP-Geth. Okay, learning number 5. Rethink where your token lives. So when you become an L2, as Vitalik was just talking about, suddenly you can trustlessly, move your assets around between chains. But ultimately, even though this is happening trustlessly, you're still going to have kind of an IOU style kind of wrapper. And so you may want to think about, well, where is the canonical version of your token going to live? And so in our case, we're actually moving the canonical version of Celo to Ethereum. And so we're deploying the Celo token as a token on Ethereum. And then we're going to move the entire supply of that token into the canonical native bridge so that when the L2 or when the L1 migrates to an L2, all of the Celo that's in the L2 will be backed by what exists on the L1. And we think that this is elegant. I think it's nice to have your token kind of in this way. It also happens to be compatible with OP-Stack's custom gas token implementation, and so that's another good reason to do it if you're using OP-Stack. But certainly, even if you're not using OP-Stack, this ability to actually rethink like where the canonical version of your token lives is an interesting one, and we highly recommend folks think about it. Okay, I said that we would have 5 learnings, but I slipped in a bonus one. It's the last one, and so we're almost done. But the last bonus learning is to do multiple upgrades. You only really have one shot at doing this well, and so you're going to want to test this repeatedly. And in our case, we've done countless upgrades on our own test nets, both into private test nets, but also long-lived public ones. And in fact, we found a lot of bugs in our long-lived, not a lot, but a few bugs in our long-lived public test nets that we don't think we would have found if we had not had those long-lived public test nets. And so we really recommend that. You want to really spend as much time testing this. And, that I think brings us to our schedule. This is where we are. This is a little map of, all of our different upgrades to date. At ECC, we launched Dango. You may have heard of that. It was our first public testnet. That was a fork of the AlphaHorse testnet, so we didn't want to upgrade AlphaHorse just yet. We wanted to create a fork of it and test that out. That was relatively long-lived. It lasted for a few months, and it really allowed us to test things with people experimenting and building on top of the chain. That then gave us confidence to do an upgrade of the actual AlphaHorse network itself, which we did about a month and a half ago. And next up is our Baklava testnet, which is our testnet where validators get to experiment with their setups. I think I saw a few validators, Celo validators in the audience today. And so for you specifically, you will be probably excited to hear that we are announcing December 12th as the target date for our Baklava upgrade. So just around the corner. All the audits will be done by then. We'll have hopefully the final version of our release. And so the Baklava upgrade will be a final dry run for our mainnet deployment, which, if everything goes well with the Baklava release, can happen in mid-January, which is just around the corner. Yeah. So yes, Cell 2 mainnet is coming, and it's coming really soon. It's been a long journey to get here, but we're really close. And with that, we'll have, you know, our new shiny little fighter to help us on the next journey. And so with that, thank you so much.